Hello, everyone. So glad you're here with us today. I'm Thayne, and I'm just very excited about this topic. It's very much worldwide spread, and I want to introduce you to Anne. Anne, you ready
Yes,
to?
I'm Ann Delfs. I'm a retired medical doctor and psychiatrist. And right now I call myself a gardener of the soul. And boy, did I have a soulful weekend, Thane.
You did, huh?
I had some
I
family
love.
members in town.
Oh, that's nice. I
Well,
love.
it is. And yet, as you know, I have a bit of a traumatic past, extremely traumatic past. I don't want to
Mm,
minimize. And it's unresolved in my family.
mm,
So even though I love my family members, there's always a little tension there because
mm,
it's a different reality. And
mm,
I still have dreams that come up that just last night, this morning, I had some disturbing dreams. And so there's still just a little bit of post-traumatic stress there, but much, much better than it's ever been. So I'm grateful for that. And yes, I've done a lot of work over the years.
mm.
But you know much about post-traumatic stress thing?
Um, I didn't know that much about it until I read your document, and I'm just like, wow, sounds like we all have a little bit of that going on. And I would just say with family, yes, I can agree. I think family can sometimes be the most where we have the most opportunity for healing and dealing with some of these things. So yeah, especially as young children, I think we have stuff from being young that have carried on and we're not even recognizing it. So thank you for letting me be a part of this and learn more about it. And I think the whole world, really, we all probably need to look at this issue.
I agree. And one of the things I've done with my lifelong experience with post-traumatic stress is put all the diagnostic criteria that you probably don't know about, but they're quite complex, into two neat and tidy little categories. In my
Mm,
experience, post-traumatic stress sufferers either automatically recreate their trauma or they
mm,
automatically avoid anything that reminds them of their unresolved traumatic experiences. And usually people go back and forth between the two. So the
mhm,
classic example would be someone who is beaten as a child gets married and he beats his own wife or children. That would
mm,
be classic recreation. And avoidance would be when his wife brings it up. No, 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 nothing happened. Everything's good. No, no, denies it.
mm,
So I have to tell myself that about my family members. They're still in the denial of just not wanting to go there.
mhm,
And each of these categories of post traumatic stress can be further divided into subcategories of physical, emotional, mental, and relational symptoms. So, a physical recreation of trauma would be someone who suddenly gets heart palpitations and they're breathing rapidly as if something stressful is going on right now, even though nothing is. That would be
mhm,
physical recreation. Or emotional recreation are the people that work in hospitals and they're undergoing this life or death. Let's say they work in the ICU and life or death every single day
mhm,
at work. That's an emotional recreation. They're going that up and down on that emotional roller coaster frequently.
mm,
And then a mental recreation is what I had this morning. I had some horrible dreams. So my mind is
mhm,
recalling what happened. And people can have flashbacks. I'm sure you've heard about soldiers that they think they're back on the battlefield, or
mm,
people can obsess, like listening to news and all the violent crime, and they have that on their minds all the time. One symptom of post traumatic stress is when kids watch a lot of violent movies or horror films, they're wanting
mm,
to go somewhere that's unresolved. And then you have
mhm,
relational recreations, like I mentioned, the people that do to others what was done to them.
mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense, and it's really pretty sad, you know.
It's very common. And what I would love to see is a news program that actually talks about world events in terms of post-traumatic stress. Can you imagine someone caught doing
Mm,
this horrible thing? Well, it turns out that horrible thing was part of his childhood, and we're going to work with him and help him work it through rather than jail time, which is appropriate sometimes, of course, but
mhm,
always get to that wounded child because the youngest children, it's like playing with dolls. You give a traumatized child some dolls, and they move the dolls to show what happened.
mhm.
That's part of play therapy.
Wow.
People that
They
are,
call that therapy?
it's play therapy. Mhm.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Exactly what happened. But
Mm-hmm.
people that are stuck at that young age will act it out where we are the dolls, so to speak. We are the toys that are being moved.
Mm-hmm.
Criminals
Mm,
move their victims to where they once were, or they saw someone in that capacity. And if we could only
mm,
see people in that way, it would be so much more compassionate rather than the denial, it's not happening, or the other
right.
extreme, these people are criminals, they should be locked away for the rest of their lives. Yes, some of them are violent criminals for sure. But to me, there's always that human perspective of what happened to a human child that caused them to go that route. And that
Mm-hmm.
has to be taken into account.
Yeah, and when people are older, they don't see them like a child, and yet they carry that child with them, and they look like an adult, somebody who should know, and they don't know what they're doing.
Right. And that's part of post traumatic stress, in that we whittle away the parts of ourselves that are hurting. So,
Mm-hmm.
emotional abuse will push aside our hearts. We won't feel emotionally, or we'll push aside our questioning mind and we won't think things through. We won't ask questions. We won't process. And
Mm-hmm.
so what happens is people lose their human attributes. So they can't tell, they can't think through, they can't feel, what this person saying doesn't feel right.
Mm. So they might make poor decisions then, or
Exactly.
put
Mhm.
themselves in dangerous situations, possibly.
Right.
Mm,
Because they've lost those faculties, or even that gut feeling that says,
mm,
"Mm, this street doesn't feel right to me. I'm going to go down that street." We all have that capacity,
mm,
right? But when we're traumatized, we either lose it or we don't pay attention to it, and we find ourselves recreating our trauma like
mm.
a dangerous circumstance. So it's not just other people or ourselves perpetrating trauma, but we find ourselves in places where other people are perpetrating trauma with us, and we can't protect
Wow.
ourselves because we have that blind spot and that compulsion to recreate trauma.
Wow. I imagine they're kind of even like people, you know, almost kind of ignore parts of their body, or they leave that part of their body, and they're not fully embodied,
Mhm.
meaning their senses aren't all there. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the avoidance
Mm-hmm.
or a post-traumatic stress, which is also delineated into physical, emotional, mental, and relational avoidance.
Mm-hmm.
Physical avoidance is the people, as you mentioned, don't feel a part of their physical body, or they don't feel their physical body at all.
Mm-hmm.
I used to be in medical school. There would be people that had this disease process for years, never noticed. They never felt.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Doctor would be like, most people are just in agonizing pain. Pain,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's a little uncomfortable. They're that much out of touch with their feelings. And the same thing with the emotions. Don't we all know people that, oh no, I used to be this way. I'm never angry. I only have love in my heart. And then I had a doctor who happened to poke me in my liver, which is an organ that tends to hold anger, and this volcano. And I had to admit, you're right. Okay.
A little bit sore there.
A little bit of anger.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I know for me, I carry most of my weight in my abdomen, and that's where I was carrying all my stress and tension. And I wasn't even aware of how much I was carrying. And I still bring myself back to that I need to embody. And like I've been taught this really cool thing of being in a vertical core and and down to your lower dantian or womb space, some people call it. Some people say the first or second chakra. And for me, it was like, wow, when I do that, my heart rate's better. When they're doing your um, blood pressure.
Mhm.
So coming into your vertical core, being in your body is actually going to help your heart and your blood pressure. And what else, so you do need, we are here physically in a body. We're meant to be in our body, not floating around. We can't do anything up there. That's why we chose a body. you
Good point.
know
And that's part of post-traumatic stress, right? We leave our body, we hover up here, and we don't do anything.
Mhm.
When we're
I,
meant to be whole, physically, emotionally, mentally, relationally, spiritually, I'd add.
I love that. And I always knew, I can always tell, I don't know what this is about, but when I will go to hug my children, they're adults now. But when I hug them, sometimes I leave my body. And the reason I know I leave my body is because I can't remember if I hugged them or not, and that's a pleasant experience, but I'm still wondering, what is there that would have me leave my body when I'm hugging my children. It's such a safe place to be. It doesn't even really make sense. But having this conversation with you right now, it's just like, yeah, what is that about? So I'll have to explore that and see what comes to me through that.
And you know how an animal responds to threat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fight, flight, or freeze.
Mm-hmm.
Hovering above our bodies would be a flight.
Mm-hmm.
Like you mentioned, it's a threat there, and to be able to sense into what might be there.
Yeah, because I know sometimes people don't have a they don't remember it.
Mhm.
And how do they overcome that? Like, how do they get to the point um, where they could remember what the trauma was, what started it, or does it matter?
Well, again, that's part of avoidance, right? Not to remember. And
Mm-hmm.
so when we're ready, I find that it comes to us. I
Okay.
liken it to an abscess. Have you ever had an abscess that is in your body and it ever so slowly comes up and you feel something there and it comes up more and you feel it and then finally it releases and it clings
Mm-hmm.
naturally. That
Mm-hmm.
memory, traumatic memory is like that. I find that it surfaces slowly and sometimes it appears out here.
Mm-hmm.
Like we'll hear it on a news show. Like for me, I first was watching a movie when I started realizing there's something here. A woman had been incested and just cried so hard for her.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, gosh, I really care about that woman. And I couldn't at all apply it to me until that night. I had all these vivid dreams where I
Mm-hmm.
woke up absolutely hysterical and crying, continuing that grief that had been held in my body all that time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when it surfaced for me. So it can come out here, it can come in dreams, it can come with all sorts of physical feelings where people feel hands on them and it's considered a hallucination, but it's actually a body memory.
Mm-hmm.
That when everything in my life is going well, why am I crying
Mm-hmm.
in a movie? And so the emotional memory comes up, or distressing thoughts come into our head, and
Mm-hmm.
that can be part of memory surfacing. Or we find ourselves saying something to someone that it has nothing to do with them, but it's absolutely appropriate to our traumatic past. So to be attentive to how the memory is surfacing.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Well, I wonder if my doing that with my children has to do with this feeling of not being wanted that happened probably because my mom didn't really want to have me because I was the fourth born in five. And I can understand that on a intellectual, like at my age, I can understand that after having three kids of my own, not wanting to be pregnant. She always said she loved me, but for some reason, I kind of live my life with that underlying message. And the only thing I can think of is maybe I leave my body because I love him so much. I mean, I don't know if that would quite make sense or if there's deeper trauma that I haven't touched on. But I was thinking that deep love that I have for my children, because I always, raising my children, kind of wondered how do they really want me? You know, like that was an underlying current of my thoughts, which I wasn't even aware of. But yeah, so I'm wondering if that maybe, you know, here my kids hug me, I leave my body because I'm so shocked they love me. Maybe,
Mhm.
you know, um, or I'm not ready for that, you know, like that response. I don't know. It's kind of interesting because I think of a hug with my kids should be so easy and calming, and it just that I would leave my body every time seems kind of like what's that about? But yeah, I'll definitely brought up some thoughts for me to kind of make sure I think about. But I think maybe too, in some ways, it becomes a habit to leave your body, so you don't have to deal with things, you know. And so it could have just been a ongoing habit that just I had to be aware of to quit having that habit. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, these symptoms of post-traumatic stress can become habits for sure. And I find that the reason why people don't know they have post-traumatic stress or how rampant it is, I truly
Mm-hmm.
think it's a pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
it is because we either call them normal, like, oh, that's just your personality. Some people are like that, either genetically determined or God-given, or it's just who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Or we go to the other extreme and make the symptoms of post-traumatic stress all these different diseases. You know,
Mm-hmm.
all these diseases we have now, that so many of them, if we really look at what's below the surface, it's
Mm-hmm.
showing post-traumatic stress,
Wow.
like a depressive disorder. People are depressed
Mm-hmm.
because they've experienced overwhelming loss that's never been resolved.
Mm-hmm.
People are bipolar because they are depressed and they can't handle the enormity of their sadness. And so they fly in the other direction as try to get away from it, right? Fight,
Mm-hmm.
flight, or freeze. They're fleeing in the other direction. And so they're manic for a time and then they go back into their depression and then
Mm.
go to the opposite extreme, as well
Well,
as a lot of physical things. There's so many physical toxins in our world right now that cause physical trauma,
mm-hmm.
chemical poisonings. There's so many chemicals in our
Mm-hmm.
now.
Well, I wonder, I just was talking with a friend the other day, and she was talking about a young gal who's suicidal. And I would imagine that if you don't deal with issues as they come up, you could feel suicidal maybe with just being in that circumstance for so long that you get depressed. And then once you're so depressed and you're still just really hard to dig your way out.
And also can be a symptom of post-traumatic stress as far as we learn to hurt ourselves when
Mm, hmm. So well, I would think underlying almost everybody in the population has some of that to deal with, just because being a child, we all went through something either embarrassing, felt stupid, or had something that was traumatic that happened that from a child's eyes, we don't understand everything like an adult would. You know, if somebody gets hurt, that could cause a trauma.
yeah, we
Somebody,
talk about big T and little T traumas as far as
mm,
the stuff we all know, the horrendous murdering and um, brutalizing people and all the
mm-hmm,
things that go on around the world. And then the little T traumas of, to me, that day to day being treated less than human. So
mm,
forcing people to follow a schedule rather than adapting schedules to what's best for human needs.
Mm, I love that. Yeah.
Things come up, you know, for in our lives, emergencies happen, things that need to change our course. And if we're stuck to always following protocol, always following schedules, we're going to miss what needs to be done for a person's evolution.
Mm,
So
yeah.
that's increasingly happening in our country. There's this dehumanization caused by trauma. As we get rid of our hurtful parts, whether physically, emotionally, mentally, relationally, we
Mm-hmm.
become less human. And so we're functioning more mechanically. And the more we function mechanically, the more we can be manipulated because
Mm-hmm.
people know if you say A, I'm going to do B, they can manipulate me to do B whenever they want me to do B, rather than me thinking, no, what's right here? What's the
Mm.
way of being with this person? What do they need from me? What do I need from them?
Yeah. Well, one thing that my mind went to was, you know, we have adults that have that, then they're raising little ones and they're teaching them what they already know plus the trauma that they could be. So it's almost like compounding on our children and then their children. And it's like, well, when it, I like to say, we're all responsible for our own healing. So if we all have some of this, if we start looking, what would you say the steps would be to start looking to heal our traumas so that we're not repeating it and then having it pass on generation after generation? What would you recommend?
Well, of course, I always recommend professional help, especially when we've had very serious trauma. But sensing into yourself, noticing where we're extreme, too much, or minimal, not enough, because that's what trauma does to us. It gets us to go to too much in our human qualities or not enough.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to learn how to balance, practice balancing, and
Mm-hmm.
practice when so many people have denied their trauma. It's in the unconscious mind. They remember the tip of an enormous iceberg of trauma. Then we have to reverse engineer, that expression. We look at where
Mm-hmm.
people are too much and we say something happened here. We look at where people can't give us where we need what we need. Well, something happened to them there. And
Mm-hmm.
look at where a normal human being would have acquired these qualities.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in assuming normality first.
Mm-hmm.
And we can go back and figure out what the traumas were.
Mm-hmm.
Would cause a perfectly normal human being to become this way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we discern the trauma.
Mm. I love that. Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense too.
And if people would just do this with their own close friends and family members, what a difference that could make in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else come to mind on the topic thing?
Well, the one thing that just popped into my mind was I used to have a friend, she would do with her children every night, what was your best part of the day? But maybe it'd be good to voice what happened, the other side, like what's the best thing and what's the worst thing that happened to you today, because the best things are great and icing on the cake, but maybe really truly we should be asking the question, what triggered you, what harmed you, what made you feel bad, and we don't talk about those things as much. I mean, I know they talk about negative stuff on the news because people are drawn to it, but what about in our own lives? We start talking to our children and asking, and talking about embarrassment, talking about feelings, talking about the negative emotions, or what happened today, just being open
Great
with
idea.
both good and bad, and embracing that. I guess I remember telling my son when he was catching the bus, the kids were teasing him because he hugged me goodbye, and when he came home, I said to him, he brought it up, he didn't want to hug me anymore, so we talked about it, and I said to him, I said, well, um, kids are going to find something to tease you about no matter what. I said, you could stop hugging me because you want to stop hugging me, or stop hugging me because they teased you, but they'll just find something else to tease you about if you respond to them. And it was such a good lesson because he continued to hug me for years. And it was just having a conversation about, what it feels like to be teased. And, kids are going to do that. That's what they do. And, what do you get to decide, you know, because they'll just find something else anyway, especially if they got a reaction and actually got you to change a habit or pattern. And so I think just sometimes having a conversation about real life, and this is what happened, or my experience. And I remember having a similar conversation with him when he got older, and saying, well, yeah, sometimes we do something that we know probably wasn't the best decision, but you can be sorry about it and apologize for it and know you're still a good person, even though you made a poor choice. We're human. We're going to make poor choices. We're going to make mistakes, and just talking about it and being real about it, I think can be so helpful.
I absolutely agree. And when we don't deal with our trauma, the more trauma we've had, we regress, we
Mm-hmm.
stunted in young psychological ages. And
Mm-hmm.
the younger we are, the more we make poor choices, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
why it's so important to work through our trauma, not
Mm-hmm.
only because we're going to be recreating it in some form if we don't, but so we can evolve and make better choices.
I love the part where you talk about the recreating, because that's something I just learned. When you have the negative thought or realize you have a negative pattern that keeps playing in your head, that you can feel the feelings, you can acknowledge that you felt that way and had those words, and then you can recreate what you want that to mean. And it's through the recreating that we have the transformation and the growth, and become better people because of it.
Yeah, I truly believe people recreate their trauma, not only because it's a biologically built-in mechanism that small children do, but on a soul level, it's to say, this is unresolved. Can you help me?
Mm-hmm.
And so we have an opportunity to get in touch with the strong feelings that are attached, the disturbing thoughts that are attached.
Mm-hmm.
Ask for what we can do. One thing is when we find ourselves with a distressing feeling or a disturbing thought, to just pause and say, where's this coming from? And yes, take advantage of the immediate circumstance of this is going on immediately, but might it be touching on something in the past?
Mm-hmm.
Allow ourselves. I look at all layers, looking at what's going on right now, what's going on in the past, and how might this be catapulting me in the future somehow. I need
Mm-hmm.
skills, I need something from this circumstance in my future. And that's why it's in my life right now.
Mm. And it's an opportunity to heal that in yourself, when we get faced with one of the books I'm going to write is about triggers, and I think that triggers are a sign that you need healing, and if it triggers you, that means you believe it's true. And I always say a trigger comes it's a gift for you, but it doesn't come in a pretty box with a pretty bow. It comes in usually an upset, and it involves at least two people. And triggers are just like triggers, and any kind of upset, there's always a gift for you in that. And just look at what it's trying to tell you. And I believe there's a gift for both people. It's not none of our business what the other person's gift is, but the fact that they came into our life and could get us to that point where it either upset us, triggered us, caused us emotional upset. Sometimes it's there to wake us up and say, hey, the, why does this bother you? you know and I've had so much healing just doing that with myself, and I really feel like God gave me that gift, and that's why I want to write the book and get it out to the world, because I don't think we should ever be triggered. Like, why not get to be where, like, we're a duck on the water, and how water rolls off a duck's back? if we don't believe it's true, we don't respond, we're not triggered. So why not get all of it handled so we're never triggered?
And that's when we resolve our trauma, we're not.
Mm-mm,
And the
mm-mm.
triggers show there's still something here.
Yeah, they
Like,
do. That's why they're a gift. They'll wake you up and say, hey, I'm at your back door. Come on, open it up. I love it, Anne. That's so beautiful. And I do believe that self-healing will lead to world healing. And so I think this is an inside job for each and every one of us, not just some. There's always something else to heal. It's not like we're going to get it all done in maybe our lifetime. But at least I've heard that it heals forward and back. So imagine if that healing if it could do that, wouldn't that be a beautiful thing to have happen where we're healing the generations to come from having to deal with what we're dealing with today in the world.
and with that in mind, can you share about our healing community?
I sure can. Our healing communities meets on Monday, the 3rd of February at 6 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Mountain, 8 p.m. Central, and 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And we would love you to join us. And I don't know, we'll have it on Zoom. And we just had a great one our first one last 2 Mondays ago. I guess every other Monday, and it was wonderful. And everybody contributed, and it was just a beautiful experience. So, thank you, Anne, for bringing this all together.
Well, thank you. And you can let us know if you're interested on either one of our websites. I'm AnneRadelfs.com. Oh, and you don't have a website, but
I don't, but I have a phone number, and you can text me or call me. I know a lot of people are into text. So my phone number is 425-345-3953. And just text me if you want the link. And then I'll either text, I like texting. I'll text it to you, or if you want it emailed or however you'd like it delivered, I can make that happen.
and y'all, we can change the world by changing ourselves. So I do hope you join us. Until next time.
And I want to say one quick thing, Anne.
Yeah.
Our bodies are like a microorganism of the whole world. So just imagine you got the whole world within you, and you have every possibility. So just like we're resilient, and we can heal. And we can heal from cancer, we can heal from anything. I mean, we just have to do our work.
Yeah.
and
know that.
and know that, yes, and trust in our bodies that we have the answers.
Bodies and
Mm-hmm.
all for now.
Bye. Thank you.